The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of the 15-Point Plan podcast. I'm Jacqueline Smith, and I'm here with my co-host, Greigg, today. And today is a special day. We have a guest today, Vija Williams. She is a hero of mine. And not only is she an amazing leader in the real estate space, but just for women in business in general. And she just accomplished something that I had the privilege to watch some of her preparation and then her story, because she did such a great job of bringing us along with her on her Instagram. And I know that Instagram is Instagram, so I'm excited to dive in today and get some more of the behind the scenes from Vija. But welcome, Vija, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. And the fact that you just called me a hero is like making me blush. So thank you. I'm glad it's a podcast. No one can see.
Well, you accomplished the event. It's called 29029, which she had to school me on before because I wanted to call it 90210.
I know.
So tell us about the event and why you chose to do it.
It's a crazy event. So it's called 29029 because, fun fact, did you guys know that the ascent to ascend Mount Everest, the elevation is 29,029 feet? Did you know that?
I did know that only because of
this
following.
event.
Yeah.
So Jesse Itzler, Colin O'Brady, and a guy named Mark, I can't remember Mark's last name. The three of them founded this event. And the basic premise was, what if we brought Mount Everest to you? So they basically, it's done on, I think it's 6 mountains a year during kind of the spring and summer. And they buy out a ski hill and you hike up the amount of times it takes to hit 29,029 feet and you gondola down. And you do all of that in a 36-hour period. So they're all the same. It's 6 a.m. on a Friday to 6 p.m. on a Saturday. So it's like, this one we did was Whistler, but they're Mont Tremblant, outside of Montreal this week. They do Sun Valley, Snow Basin, Jackson Hole, Stowe, and Vermont, I think are the other ones. And so it's an extraordinarily well-run event. And it varies. So some of the ascents, like some of them take 19 ascents because they're short and steep.
Right.
Whistler's is the longest in mileage, but also the mildest ascent. So Whistler is only 8 times up, but it's 3.9 miles, 3,900 feet per ascent. So it's basically a 1-to-1 ratio, right? 1,000 feet per mile. And so it's that makes it a little different from like Jackson Hole, which is like super steep and I don't know, maybe 17 or 19 miles, but 19 ascents. So it's just they're all different.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
So Vija, first of all, congratulations on completing the 29029, because as anybody that has seen this, it is certainly not an easy feat. So congratulations on doing that. And like Jacqueline said, she called you a hero. You've always been somebody that has completely inspired me in the real estate world, in the business world, in all buckets of life. So thank you for taking some time and joining us today. But this particularly in the health and wellness, in the fitness, in the pushing through something absolutely amazing and incredible. You've inspired me and hundreds of people because I see you popping up. I see people asking questions. So thank you for doing this. Congratulations for doing this. This is just like a blink in the moment of time, though, of this journey that you've been on for many years. And I want to talk with you about this particular achievement that you've just recently gone on. But I want to dive a little bit deeper and go maybe back to 2022, because I see you talking about where this started, Vija, and maybe why this started. And congratulations on the 29029, but also congratulations on the fact that during this process, you lost over 100 pounds training for this. Is that right?
Well, I didn't. Yeah. Thank you, by the way. And you're reminding me, I didn't answer all of Jacqueline's question because she's like, why the heck did you do this? And you're right. It is part of a bigger story. I have lost, it kind of depends on the day, but over 100 pounds. How much I've lost varies. But I've lost weight and been an athlete before. So this isn't the first time I've lost weight. This is the first time I've lost that much weight. And, my simple comment on that would be that, we all have our crosses to bear. And, for whatever reason, I mean, mine's, not drugs and alcohol, it's food. It's my weight. That's kind of been my battle. I've been successful in a lot of other areas of my life, and that one had eluded me. And so in 2022, I attempted 2 marathons. And I started the year, well over 200 pounds, thinking in my head, well, I'm an athlete. Like my brain hadn't caught up with my body. And so I was like, I'm going to sign up for this really cool thing. It's, this program, it's like a leadership program, and it culminates with this trip to Patagonia, and we do a marathon. And well, if I'm going to do that, someone invited me to do the New York Marathon, I'll do that. I'm just going to walk them. I'm not going to run them. I'm just going to be a walker. And, fast forward to Patagonia, alone on a race course in the middle of Patagonia, 100 something pounds overweight. I barely made a half marathon. I mean, I barely could walk a half marathon. And, I'll grant you it was a really hard course. And I'll also grant you that I had figured out that I wasn't going to accomplish it. And I had already kind of said, hey, I'm going to make this a half before I started. So there were lessons there, but the real bottom for me came when I turned around and tried to do the New York Marathon in December of 2022. And really one of the lowest moments of my life. I couldn't even get past mile 17 walking. And I'm not knocking that. I know that 26 miles is a long way, but you should be able to walk 26 miles in an untimed way. It just should have been something my standards were, I should have been able to do that, and I couldn't. And, I basically limped and got as far as my daughter, hugged her. And I was so ashamed that I passed her before I ducked out. Like I couldn't see her. I didn't want her to see me leave the course. But then, of course, like I'm getting in a taxi with my bib on in New York City. Everybody knows what's happening when you leave the course halfway. It was just a very hard moment for me. And so I was like, that's it. That's freaking it. And so the next month is when I started the weight loss. And then I'm going to just say, I'm just going to give a little disclaimer. There's a lot of different ways to lose weight, and I really don't think there's one right way. And I'm just going to share that for me, that first year, I did zero exercise. It was all a very medically supervised, super low calorie diet. Again, many ways to do that. For me, that's what I did. And I had a couple aids that I used as well, medical aids. And so I lost I have to look at that, I probably lost 80, 85 of it. And then to your point, when this year started, I pre-planned. I was like, I just want to get 1 year of habit stacking done. Like I just want 1 year, I just want to completely focus on my fueling and my diet and just get that established. And then I want to start adding fitness. And for me, it was the right decision because fueling in eating is quite complicated now. Like as you guys know, when you're starting to train for endurance events, you eat a lot, and you have to eat during the workout, pre-workout. You have to make sure you're eating certain macros. It's almost like a science. You have to calculate things.
Absolutely.
And so it was a tough transition for me, to be honest, like to go from a deficit like that to that. And so I eased in slowly. And so I signed up for my redemption race, which, by the way, I'm doing the New York Marathon this year. Like that was the big thing. That was going to be the redemption. And then a spot opened up in 29029, and I guess that was in my future. I can't explain it. Like I'd seen video, and I've had friends that did it. And at first, the person who invited me, I said, no, 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 I'm not ready for that. But then I was like, well, actually, that's pretty good training for the marathon. Like little did I know, it's, by the way, side note, spoiler alert, it's way harder.
Right.
Like, I'm like, what was I thinking? So anyway, I was like, okay, well, at the time, I'm like, well, that's actually really great timing because from training for that, like that'll be done, 2.5 months before the marathon. And so I said yes, and I regretted it immediately. But, but I was pretty determined, and that was, I didn't even start training. It was like April I started training. So I was like, I call it going from like couch to 29029 in about 5 months.
I hear what you're saying there, Via, but I think that you did so much preparation leading up to that. I love that quote that you said your brain hadn't caught up with your body.
Yeah.
But
Both
you were
times. It still hasn't now either.
But it sounds like you reversed that because you specifically said, I did a year of habit stacking on nutrition first. I think our listeners can take a lot away from that. You didn't go out and say, I'm going to change my nutrition. I'm going to change my exercise. I'm going to change all this at once. You did one thing at a time very intentionally. It sounds like in a year is a long time. And now it sounds like that paid off because that habit has stuck.
Mhm. That is true, and that's true. I, gave myself a lot of grace for mistakes, like, like during 2023, I guess that was because this is yeah. So during 2023, I did fall off the wagon. I made mistakes. Whatever it was, and I just kind of gave myself a lot of grace. I plodded along. I just always moved the needle. I just focused on different things at different times. One of them was managing hunger. One of them was, macro. It was gradual stack of diet habits that kind of happened that year.
Can I ask a question in regards to your nutrition, just kind of broad? When you were in the weight loss mode and journey, two different modes that I hear commonly is this intermittent fasting.
I'm in the
Or
opposite of that. I'm the
okay,
opposite.
that's where I was going with this. I hear a lot of people that focus on intermittent fasting, eating less to lose weight. Then I hear people that say, no, 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 you got to eat more to speed up your metabolism. Sounds like that's the route you took. Is that right?
I don't know that
Was
I
there
feel
one?
strongly about it. Like, I feel like I really do think intermittent fasting does work for a lot of people. For me, it's, and just the way I worked with a registered dietitian, by the way. I should have probably mentioned that.
You did, yeah. You mentioned that you had help and that you had a specific
Yeah.
help on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then doctors and lab work happened along the way, and but for me, I eat all the time. I eat a lot, and so for me, it was really planning and preparing that in advance, knowing that I'm going to eat all the time. And back then in weight loss mode, it was I wasn't keto, but it was much more focused on protein and fiber. One of the shifts I've had to do actually this year is there's just so many carbs. I mean, that you have to have,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to get into the whole, I'm not fat adapted. So there are some people that kind of can do endurance in a ketogenic state and can
Sure.
use fat versus glucose. I'm not one. And so you have to have glucose, you have to have, carbs. And so I eat a ton of carbs when I'm working out. And then like leading into weeks like this, leading into the marathon, I will. But I was just telling you guys before, like it's like the week after the event, I don't need to be stuffing my face with carbs, and I am, which is kind of freaky because like I had that habit of not.
Sure.
So I'm kind of like, okay, time to rein it in. So yeah.
So you've had a lot of, or I guess not as much as I thought if you just started training in April.
It's not as long as you think, and I was in zero shape. Like, I wanna
Mhm.
be crystal clear, like, I literally was barely even I didn't
Yeah.
get 10,000 steps a day.
So there's a lot of people that sign up for this event
Mhm.
that do not finish this event.
Mhm.
Some I would even say they may have trained more than you or whatever. And so what do you think it is? Because I think about a lot of different areas this shows up. Like in business, we make commitments to ourselves. Ryan and I talk a lot about keeping promises to ourselves. So whatever, whether it's 29029 or a 30-day challenge for 15-point plan or a business, productivity event, like why do you think it is that some people finish and some people don't? Like you have a lot of lessons you've learned.
I mean, that is the question, right?
Yeah.
That is the question in marathons, in 29029. And I'll say there's a couple things, and I wanna honor all of my colleagues who finished and didn't finish. 67% finished. So Whistler has the highest,
Uh,
completion rate on
Hmm.
this one. But, it's a great question, and, 'cause it is the question. And a couple things. Number one, it is preparation. I mean, at the end of the day, I followed the plan that was prescribed to me. Now, no one's going to follow anything 100%. And I didn't. I was definitely weaker during the weekdays, stronger. I never missed a weekend, but I was, not as consistent during the week, but I was consistent enough and followed that thing, 60, 70%, which is a good lesson in life, showing up and doing 60%. If you have a prescribed plan and a model that works, if you show up and you consistently do even 60 to 70% of it, time on task on time on task on time, you're probably going to succeed, so that was one of them. Number two, I would say gets into that and my mantra, my complete life changing mantra, which my friend Sarita sent me after after the failure of the New York Marathon, because that failure, by the way, was 100% and I was underprepared. I did not put enough time on pavement. Period. End of story. That it was 1,000% that. And what happens is you get injured when you overexert yourself on a big event. You guys know that. So my mantra is it's a quote by Jackie Manhard, and it's the training is the marathon, the race is the celebration. So every single day that I woke up and I was like, I don't want to run today. I don't want to hike at 6:30, 5:30 in the morning. I would say, no, Bia, this is your 29029. This today, Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., this is you don't understand, like, this is your event. August weekend is just you showing that you did it. That's not it. And then, the day 29029 got over, and I went right into training for the marathon with my run coach. I'm like, oh no, now we're in the marathon. It's a week marathon for Via. Like that, New York City on November 3rd or whatever it is. That's just where I get to celebrate all the work. So to your point, I do think it is preparation. In fact, I would argue it's 90. Yeah, I don't know what the percentage is now, but the other thing it is obviously mindset. So assuming you've got the physical fitness for it, so you have to have that as an assumption, because there are some that did undertrain. But if you have the physical fitness, then it's mindset. And I was with well, and I'm going to say this, since we're talking about food and fueling. One of my dear friends didn't finish, and when we talk about preparation, I think everyone assumed that they could just hike, but the preparation is knowing how to fuel, when to fuel. You need to be eating 200 to 300 calories an hour. Be prepared with those. You need to make sure that you've practiced, that your GI system can handle the gels or whatever it is you're having. And that's part of preparation. And one of my friends simply didn't finish because she didn't practice fueling. And she didn't realize she'd hit the wall. She'd bonked. I took one look at her. I'm like, you need food. I mean, I was grabbing pills and she was almost going to pass out. And she's like, what does bonking mean? And I'm like, you don't have enough glucose. That's what you need. And I was asking hikers for food. 20 minutes after just getting her food, she was like, oh my God, I feel like a new person. I'm like, yeah. That's fueling. So, I would just say that prep isn't just like me taking Instagram photos of going up mountains. There are calculations on sweat loss and electrolytes and, carb loading before, and like what I ate before and what I have to eat during, you know what I mean? So I don't want to make it sound like a PhD, because it's not. It's pretty simple, but that's just part of it. And the difference between one lap and another, there's the only difference besides, some weather constraints, was fuel. If I had a good lap or a bad lap, it was fuel.
Yeah, I think you're so right with that, Via, and that's such a good point. How you said, like, making sure your intestine or your insides can handle those gels.
Nothing new on race day. You're not allowed to.
Exactly. Chris Suarez talked about that from a marathon a while ago, like drinking Gatorade. He never drink so. That is such a good point. The separation is in the preparation, and if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And the nutrition is such a major part of an event like this. I love how you said you basically went right from this to knowing the New York Marathon was right around the
In the
corner.
marathon right now as we speak. Like, I'm doing my marathon. You're watching me do my marathon.
And Joe DeCina, the guy that created the Spartan race, he says that one of the best ways to stay healthy is to always have something on the calendar.
Oh, I like it.
Always have something on the calendar. And what that means is in 3 months, I have this. So every morning that I wake up and I don't want to train, I'm like, dude, 3 months, you have something on the calendar. You have to train. So I love how you said, like, this is done. And now New York Marathon goes right into that. And the training is the marathon. The race is the celebration. You talked about, and I know you have questions, Jacqueline.
One thing about that.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan, I totally love that. And that's probably true for me. But there's also the concept of periodization, which is that we do need to let our bodies rest. And so, it's okay to even do back-to-back events like that. But I can guarantee you December will be a month of rest. Will I work out? Yeah. Will I exercise? Yeah. But it's going to be very light, very zone 2. And there's a great book on that called Primal Endurance that I highly recommend. And, it talks about that you need periodization even in an arc of an event, we had rest weeks. it didn't mean that we stopped workouts, but they were easy weeks, right?
Right.
But so I guess my comment would be, as long as you're building in rest and recovery and you're not pushing your body too hard.
Yeah, I think recovery is a super good point, right? And that goes into the 15-point plan, looking at things like your mindfulness and your sleep and your
Yeah.
hydration, those things that will allow your body to recover from all that stress. I wanted to ask a question, then I'm going to pass it back to Jacqueline. I was watching your reels and I love how you documented all this and you're so excited in ascent number one. You're like, here we go. This is super exciting. Woohoo. Fast forward to ascent number 5. It is dark. You can hear your voice. You can hear how almost broken you sound and the sound of like, I don't know if I can do this. And my question was almost, how did you dig into that darkness? But I think you already answered a little bit. How much did your previous 2 marathons come into play when you were sitting there in the dark thinking, I don't know if I should go any farther?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because to me, the reason I did this event, if anything's going to make me choke up, it's that question. Because um, for me, I was looking for that dark wolf moment. I was looking for that pain cave moment, and my relationship with my pain management has done a 180. And what I mean by that is, because I feel confident in my training, my relationship with pain isn't to avoid it anymore. In
Mm,
fact, my relationship with pain is like, I talk to it now. I have a really good inner dialogue. I have a plan and a strategy. I have a mental strategy for the pain cave, and, hurt locker, pain cave, whatever you want to call it. And so what's been cool about, I remember distinctly in all of my hikes, the hardest one I did one day, it was kind of at the peak of our training before we tapered. It was really hard. And I finally hit the pain cave that I've been kind of waiting for all season. Believe it or not, because it was such a gradual, you know, build up conditioning, I didn't really hit the pain cave a lot. And the
mm,
pain cave I would define as that moment where you're like, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this." That's that moment. It just, when you're running and you stop, those moments, right? And I remember hitting the pain cave and I go, "Oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you." And because I planned it, I had a pain management, and I
yeah,
started talking to this amazing part of myself that hardly comes out. We hardly push ourselves that much, if you
Mhm.
think about it. And this is probably the most important lesson I have for anybody here. We don't get to see that part of ourselves a lot. And so when you push yourself and you challenge yourself, and it's such a great thing to do with physical fitness, because it's such a tangible way to be in the pain cave, and you change your relationship and you embrace it and you expect it and you're waiting for it. And I started talking to it. The first time it came was during training, like I said, and I was like, okay, what feeds you? What's gonna help me override you? You tell me,
mm,
have me help you. And and it's just a constant dialogue on how my brain is going to override my body. And I waited for it, and I was excited about it. I know it sounds warped, and it is warped. There's a bunch of crazy people out there. I think I finally understood David Goggins after years of listening to him. I don't think I really understood him, and I'm nowhere near David Goggins, to be clear, but in my own world, it felt like that.
Mhm.
And so when, Brian, what you're talking about is like, by that, fifth or sixth ascent, when it was getting hard, it was actually probably in a warped way my favorite part. I remember being alone by myself, 4 a.m. by myself on a mountain, pouring rain, freezing cold, in the 40s below into the 30s above. Did that ascent with a headlamp by myself. I mean, there's bears out there, right? And I was like, I just had a spiritual transformational experience.
mm,
And I expected it. I wanted that moment. I liked that I was by myself. I did almost all my ascents with people, and it was special. That doesn't mean it wasn't effing hard. This is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And I don't want to take away from this and make it sound like so, but it was harder than anything I've done. But the difference would be, that's what I was there for. I mean, I wanted to
right.
see who was going to come out. How was I going to show up in that moment? And you just don't know. That's Jacqueline, like, to go back to something you asked, like that, that's really the mindset it takes to finish.
Mhm.
Is this like, I am actually here waiting to greet this utter pain
Mm,
that is so great that I want to quit and not quit. Because I think the winners didn't, I don't care about finishing.
Yeah.
The issue is just not quitting.
mhm,
It
mhm,
Whether you finish or not, you're a winner to me if you didn't quit. The people, to me, that made me choke up or the people that it ends at 6 p.m., that at 4 or 5 p.m. are still slogging up that mountain, knowing
Mm,
they can't make the time, knowing they're
mm,
not going to hit 8 ascents, but they didn't quit. That
yeah,
meant more to me than the people who got those red hats and finished, honestly.
yeah, yeah. When I did a Spartan race a few years ago with Chad Hyams and I felt like quitting, that was my mantra, Via, and it stuck with me forever was we don't quit.
Yeah.
We just don't quit. We don't quit. That was what I just kept repeating to myself. Um, and on our last podcast, Jacqueline and I talked about the fact that pain is temporary, but the victory lasts forever. Pain is temporary, but the
Like that.
victory lasts forever. Like your ankles were probably so busted, your knees are busted, but today they're probably fine. And now you have that notch in your belt for the rest of your life.
You know what one of my big mantras was the whole time? It was, I trained for this. I trained for this. I trained for this. And it was mental and physical. I was like, I've trained for this. That was probably my most common mantra. Like, I'm ready for this. I was ready for this. I'm physically ready for this. So this is now just here. This is all a matter of getting my brain to override my body, what my body wants to do.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the quotes that I just recently saw, it was just simple, easy doesn't change us. And it sounds like that was something that you had planned for, was that you wanted to overcome. You wanted the transformation that comes from overcoming in that moment. And it only happens from overcoming in that moment. There's no there's no shortcut that you can take. Like, think about this in business, because I know you've done some interviews where you've really taken the lessons from this and applied them to business, because we're all in business here. And there's no shortcut that gives you the transformation that comes from overcoming your physical, the mental, the emotional, and then you get that spiritual transformation that you talked about as a result of the overcoming. And I'm just so in awe. I saw you in the gondola. I don't know what ascent it was, but there was a lot of F bombs in that.
Yeah, sorry. I was just, you kind of get in like warrior mode, you're
Totally.
in
Yeah.
on the field there.
Yeah, and I was like, "Wow," like, I don't know if I could do that, and just seeing, like, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do? Because that's the moment I think that we make that choice, and the choice is to keep moving through the pain or to allow it to cause us to fall back.
Mhm.
And just seeing you do that was inspiring to me. Like, I could get emotional. I did. I actually cried watching you in that moment. So,
It's really funny because thank you. And we talk about my brain didn't catch up with my body in, 2 years ago. But the reverse has happened where it's funny because you would think, even based on this interview, you would think I went through that whole thing thinking I'm finishing, right?
mhm.
And and instead, I'm just being honest. Like I want to tell you that. Like that would make me sound better. But instead, it was more that I know I'm not going to quit, but I never believed I was going to finish. In fact,
Hmm.
I I know this is warped, and some psychologist out there is going to hear this and please tell me what this is about, because I could see the red carpet of the finish line, and I literally, like, so I was 100 feet away from it. And
Wow.
I literally thought, I'm not, I don't think I'm gonna finish. Like, something's gonna happen between here and that finish line. I couldn't It was, like, too good to be true? I don't know. But I didn't believe I was finished, and so what was interesting is, like, if you see pictures or footage of me at the finish line, like, everyone's, like, doing this, and they're, like, holding their things up, and they're like, "Yeah, baby," and, like, punch in the air. I was, like, covering my face,
Mhm.
and I couldn't really talk because I couldn't believe it. It was more disbelief. Like it was not really excitement, it was disbelief actually.
Hmm.
Which I don't know, that is just, all of this is a process, and whenever we're fighting with an identity, whether it's negative or positive, you have to accept that new identity. Like it's even hard for me to say to you now, like I am an athlete. I'm
Mhm.
going to have to work on that. I am working on that. Like just, walking into that identity is just as challenging as it was for me to not to say I'm not an athlete back in 2022. It's always a journey. There's no end destination with
Yeah,
growth.
do you know what I heard in that though was like decades of doubt in your body of being an athlete is now removed and gone forever.
Is it, yes, I'd like to think so. I think that I think it's going to be a process for me to continue to work on my self-esteem with that, my confidence with that. Like I want that to be the case. I think that it's going to take some active work for me to make that true.
I think that I watched that, and in my head, every single time I saw your videos pop up, I went, "There's no way Via's not going to complete this." I see it in her. I see it. I see through her eyes into her soul right now. She is destined to do
I
this.
was always going to finish.
There was
I know
no
that.
way you were not going to complete that, and I believe that when you cross that finish line, decades of doubt with you and you being an athlete are completely removed forever if you allow them to be. I think that's just gone. That's no longer a part of your life, and you are 100% an athlete. So congratulations.
Thank
That
you.
journey is incredible. And of course, it still goes and it didn't stop. It goes forever. Our journeys go forever. And I think now you got that notch in your belt. Like, look, I don't quit. I can do damn near anything. In fact, I can do anything. I am a damn athlete.
That's right. I am.
You are an
I feel it.
inspiration.
I
You are a hero, Via. Dang it.
I'm so excited because we have a gal on our team who's doing the New York Marathon as well, and it's been a dream of hers. And so I'm actually going to be there.
You are?
We'll
Oh
get
my
to see you
gosh.
do that. And I'm just so thankful for you taking the time to do this interview and being so open about your journey. And I think this will help a lot of people that maybe there's other people out there that are overweight, feeling like they're not an athlete, feeling like it's too far gone, that look at what you've done in less than 2 years in your life. And I know that as you continue to keep promises with yourself, that's what builds our confidence. That's what builds our self-esteem. And so I'm excited to see you continue on this transformation journey. And thank you so much for sharing with us and our listeners.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you online. Her name is Vija Williams. That's spelled Vija Williams. And you can find her on social media at Vija, Via, Vij.
Yeah, Via, Vija.
Yep. And she does a ton of really cool stuff. She has a cool program called She Inc. She has all kinds of amazing things that go on, not just with women, but a lot of cool stuff with women, a lot of cool stuff with business. So I highly recommend you go follow her at Via, Via, Vija. Any last words for us, Via?
Just thank you. Thank you for having me. And, you don't have to climb a mountain 8 times, 19 times, whatever it is. You can choose something that challenges you. But I would challenge and charge everybody listening to this. If this spoke to you in a way, pick one thing a year. You can call it a misogi. There's a name for it. Pick one thing a year that, scares you and pushes you so that you can have that transformational moment where you don't think you can do it and you do it. And, whatever that is, it's turned into a yearly practice now, and I won't stop.
I love that. Via, thank you again for joining us. As always, don't forget to check our other podcasts at winmakegive.com. You can find Jacqueline at Jacqueline Ray Smith, and you can find me at Ryan Park Greigg on all social media outlets. Again, thank you for listening, and we hope that you like this one. Share it with your friends and family. Hit that like and subscribe button. And until next time, 15 Point Plan listeners, thank you. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.